I'm Jen Lucas, managing editor of the Knitting Circle, and I want to welcome you to today's live event. In this session, we are going to be knitting a cowl, and it's the Gentle Waves cowl, and I have it right here. It's a 3-color cowl that's very easy to make, and it's perfect for the fall. I love it because it has some lace stitches, and I love to knit lace, but then it also has this cool detail with these tuck stitches or ridges. I have been incorporating these a lot into some of my recent patterns. And I really loved it with the combination of the lace. So this is what we're going to be making today. If you haven't done so already, be sure to check out the link in the description of the video, wherever you're watching, in order to download the pattern. And then you can follow along with me. And then after the video, make one for yourself. In addition to downloading the pattern, just pay attention to that chat box that you're also going to see wherever you're watching the video. And you can use that chat box to say hello, let us know maybe what you're knitting, how long you've been knitting, where you're watching from. We always love to know that stuff as I'm working through the project today. And then also, if you have any questions while I am working on the project, absolutely drop them into the chat box and I will get to as many of those as I can while we are working on this pattern. So I really hope that you enjoy making this. I really think that this will be a fun one, again, for the fall, because I think it'll look good even if you wear it over a sweater, or it's the perfect sort of size, I think, to tuck into your coat when it does get a little bit colder. Where I live in Chicago land area, it's pretty nice right now, but it is getting colder at night. So soon we'll be breaking out, I think, all of the knits. So I'm going to go ahead and just flip my camera down so you can see my hands, and we are going to get started. So first, let's go ahead and talk about those materials that we're going to need. So you can see from my cowl here, I have 3 colors, and these 3 colors are entirely up to you. For the yarn, I used a bulky weight yarn. So I have just some of my leftovers here. I would put this on the thinner side of bulky, but you're just going to want a bulky weight yarn. And for our main color, which for me was this cream, I went and it's going to use 205 yards total of the main color. So if you're going to use it for all of the main color in the pattern, you're going to need 205 yards. And then your contrasting color number 1, which for me was the magenta, you're going to need 100 yards of this, and then 75 yards of your contrasting color number 2. So if we take a look at the cowl here, you'll see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4 sections of the magenta, or the contrasting color number 1, and then 1, 2, 3 ridges of our contrasting color number 2. So if you're using the bulky weight yarn and following this pattern, each of these little ridges or tucks are going to take about 25 yards of yarn. So this is a really great project because you can mix up which colors that you're going to use. You could definitely use leftovers. If you even have some bulky weight yarn that's, I think, in rainbow colors, I think that would be really fun. I always just want to knit everything in rainbow colors anyway, but I think that could be really cool. Even if you have a variegated yarn for these ridges, that could be really interesting. So this isn't something where you necessarily have to go out and buy all brand new yarn. Yes, you do need a little over 200 yards for this bulky weight, and you may or may not have that much of the same color bulky weight in your stash. But the ridges, you can really play around with it and make some really interesting color combinations. And you can obviously knit this in whatever color you like. So in addition to the yarn, of course, we need knitting needles. I have a smaller knitting needle here to demonstrate, but you're going to need a circular needle. I have a 16-inch here, that's what I'm going to use for demonstrating. To knit the actual whole cowl, you're going to want a US size 10 or 6 millimeter circular needle, and you're going to want that one to be 24 inches or longer. So again, here I have a 16-inch. The reason that in the pattern I have listed a 24-inch cable is because we are going to have 90 stitches on this actual cowl. And so 90 stitches on a tiny little on a tiny little circular needle like this, that's going to be a lot of stitches crammed onto here. So you're going to want that 24-inch circular. If you like knitting using magic loop, you can use an even longer circular needle, but really with a cowl, I just usually pick the circular needle that's the right size for the circumference. And for this one, a 24-inch circular will work just fine. And then in addition to that, you're just going to kind of need all those usual things we need. We're going to need a stitch marker just to mark the beginning of our round, some scissors to trim our yarn. And I have a shiny one here today, unfortunately, but then you're also going to need your yarn or tapestry needle. So now that we've talked about all the supplies, we can go ahead and get started with our contrasting color number 1. So for me, that's the magenta. Let's see, Linda says, howdy from Texas. Can you at some time show how to wear or drape this? Yes, at the end of the video, I will definitely come back and show you how I like to wear it. So for sure, we can do that because, yeah, sometimes cowls are a little bit awkward, like the length of them. And that actually brings up a really good point. We can talk about this a little more later, is in the pattern, I do have in the pattern notes that you can cast on any multiple of 15 stitches to make this cowl. Obviously, that's going to change the whole circumference of the cowl or where your head's going to go. But if you like it a little closer to your neck, you could maybe do 75 stitches instead of 90. If you wanted a little longer, you could add, maybe do 120 stitches and add 2 more repeats. So as long as you have a multiple of 15 stitches cast on, this pattern is going to work. But for this particular size, we're going to cast on 90 stitches. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I'm not going to cast on all 90 stitches, of course. So you can really use whatever kind of cast on you like. I'm just going to start with the slip knot. And I'm just going to start casting on my stitches using the long tail cast on. For this particular cowl, we're not worried about having too stretchy of a cast on. We don't want our cast on to be super, super tight, obviously, because we need the cowl to go over our head. But you know, you don't need to worry about doing some sort of super loosey-goosey cast on with this one. Just a regular long tail cast on will work. If you like the knitted cast on, any of those will work fine. If you've seen some of my other live videos, you know that I'm often using the German twisted cast on if we're doing something like a hat or fingerless mitts or, you know, something that needs to really stretch over like a body part, like, you know, a hand or foot or whatever, head. But in this case, you know, you don't really need a super, super loose cast on. So if you need a review of the long tail cast on, don't forget that you'll be able to come back and watch this video to, you know, pick up any of the tips you need again, anything like that. And also on our website, the Knitting Circle, we have a free video that will show you how to do the long tail cast on and the knitted cast on. So if you're just curious about different cast ons, we have videos for a whole bunch of them. But again, here I'm just using that long tail. I'm not even counting how many stitches I'm casting on, but for the actual project, you'll be casting on a total of 90 stitches. And here, again, I'm just doing less because we're just going to look at a little sample of this. So you don't have to sit and watch me knit that many stitches at a time. Okay, so that looks good. Let's see if we'll be able to join in the round. Oh yeah. Okay, so let's say we have our 90 stitches cast on. I'm going to give myself a little bit of a longer tail here. And so what I do first is I would have my 90 stitches cast on. We'll just arrange our yarn here. So take a look at our stitches. And now we want to join in the round, being careful not to twist. And I know that that can sometimes seem like kind of a pointless direction, being careful not to twist, but the amount of times we have all probably put a twist in our circular knitting is astonishing. I still do it all the time, even though I knit for my job. So I do put that in the patterns just so you can take a second, take a pause and look at your stitches. So when I am going to join in the round, I like to make sure that my cast on, so where I have sort of this straight line of where the stitches were cast on, that they're all going to the center of my needle. I don't want anything, and this is going to be a little hard to see. I might lift it up for you. You don't want to have anything happening like this. See how it's inside, comes to the outside and back like that. You don't want that twist in there, because what happens then is you've put a twist in your knitting. And if you don't catch it after round one, then you've pretty much have a twist in your knitting, and you are making more of a Mobius than a cowl, which is its own thing, but not what we're trying to do. So we're going to just grab a stitch marker here. I like these little locking ones, but whatever kind of stitch marker you like, we're going to have that ready. And then, okay, let's say again, we have our 90 stitches cast on. When I am joining in the round, I actually like to then cast on one extra stitch. So just using that same long tail cast on. So for the actual cowl, that would be, now I have 91 stitches. But what I'm going to do is hold my knitting. I'm going to slip one stitch from the left needle to the right, and then that extra stitch I cast on the right needle, I'm going to pass it up and over, just like I'm binding off. And it is a little loose, but that's just because it's attached to my working yarn and my tail. So I can just pull that tight. So all I did now was bind off that one stitch. I would be back at my original stitch count again for this cowl. It would be 90. And now I have this nice tight little join, and I don't get a big gap there like you sometimes can get when you just join in the round and start knitting. It's fixable if you just join in the round and start knitting, but I like, this is a really nice, neat way to make a nice join for working in the round. So now we've joined in the round. Going to place our marker, and the next direction is to just knit 6 rounds, excuse me. So you would have your 90 stitches cast on, and then we are just knitting all the stitches for 6 rounds. So that's pretty easy. If you're a brand new knitter, I don't want you to get discouraged by this pattern and the fact that we're doing these like little tucks. There's nothing in here that's really too hard. Making those tucks can be a little bit tricky, but just know that it's fiddly for everybody, whether you're a beginner or an expert knitter. It is the fiddly bit of the pattern, but I'll show you exactly how easy it is to pick up. And actually, most of them, it's super easy because you can see based on the color changes where we're going to pick up stitches to make that tuck. So you would just keep knitting around and knitting around until you had knit a total of 6 rounds. So once you've done that, I have a little sample of that here. You're just going to have some stockinette stitch that looks like this. And it is curling because that's what stockinette stitch does, is it has a tendency to curl up. And so once we have our 6 rounds in our contrasting color number 1, we are going to now form our first ridge. And we're going to form that first ridge by joining our main color. And then with the main color and our needle, we're going to pick up a strand from the cast on edge from the wrong side or inside of the next stitch, place it on the needle and knit it together. Now that's a bunch of words, but I'm going to show you just how easy it is. It's really a little bit easier than it sounds. And working into this cast on edge is probably the hardest little tuck or ridge we're going to make. The rest of them are super easy. So I'm going to just knit this last stitch. And now I'm at the beginning of my round. When I made my sample, my contrasting colors, I cut the yarn. I cut the contrasting color yarn because it's a pretty long way between, for example, using this one and then this one. And especially with my cream yarn, even though I could carry it up neatly on the inside, I was a little bit concerned. I don't know. I mean, how concerned can you get about knitting? But I didn't want the magenta or this teal color to be able to see it behind the cream, since I did use such a light color. Also, I personally would rather weave in a few extra ends than have to manage all these different contrasting colors as I'm knitting. That's just a personal preference thing. So you absolutely can carry up your contrasting colors on the inside or wrong side of your work as you go. But just know that the contrasting colors, I did cut them and then I did weave in the ends at the end. But again, that's up to you how you want to do it. Okay, so we're going to slip our marker. And now we're going to join our new color and then also start picking up our cast on edge. So our directions say, with right needle, pick up one strand from cast on edge and place it onto left needle. So basically what we're doing here is we're coming to our wrong side and we're folding it. So it's almost like if you're doing like a picot edge or some other kind of folded thing. So we can pick this strand up with our right needle. You just need to grab one strand, just like that. And then place it on the left needle. And then we're going to knit it together. And you could see all I did was just place my new yarn back here, just behind it. And I just held it down while I knit that stitch with that new yarn. Now let's get our tail out of the way. We go to the next one. We're just going to pick up the next strand. We're going to go from back to front, stick it on the needle, just like that, and knit it together. And you would just keep doing that all the way around. Now, depending on what color you're using, depending on how you knit, you might find easier ways to do this. So look what I'm doing here. I'm flipping it over. I'm actually taking my left needle, picking up a strand from front to back, and then it's already on the left needle to knit it together. And I knit in the English or throwing method. So I hold the yarn in my right hand, but let's give it a try. Let's see if we can do this with the yarn in our left hand in the continental style. So again, you just need to find what works for you. This is one of those things where what works for me and how I knit might not work for you. So if we're doing continental, I think you might find it easier just to take your left needle, pick up a strand, and then knit it together with the next one. Just like that. I'm not the best at knitting using the continental method since this isn't my normal knitting style, but hey, we got it. So you could also do it like that. And now if you're a true left-handed knitter and knit in the mirror image, you would be picking this up and it would be, you would be knitting from, instead of your left needle to your right, it'd be your right needle to the left, but the process is still exactly the same. It would just be the mirror image. And now as you're picking these up, just try to be consistent if you can on where you're picking up in that cast on edge. If you can pick up the bottom strand, great. A little split of the yarn there. I'm going to switch back to my yarn in my right hand because that's the way I'm most comfortable. And don't worry too much if you get a little bit off. If you get to the end and you feel like you don't have any more cast on to work into, that's okay. As long as you're not, as long as you didn't move so far along that now everything's bunched up on this end, you can go into one of the strands of your cast on a second time if you need to. You know, this is one of those things that is perfect for fudging if you need to, because this is going to the inside or wrong side of our work. So again, I just encourage you when you are making your own cowl, just play around a little bit with what feels most comfortable to you as far as how you're going to pick up that stitch. And again, we can take it with the right needle and go from back to front, stick it on the left needle and knit it, or it might feel more comfortable for you just to take your left needle and go from front to back to pick up that strand and knit it just like that. And you would continue that all the way around. And once you've done that, you have something that just looks a little like this. And so I've picked up all the way around, and you can see this is what the wrong side looks like. You can see there's even spots when I was working the sample that maybe I didn't quite pick up exactly the same in every single strand. but from the front, look how nice and finished that looks. I think this is a really nice detail that you could add onto a lot of stuff. I think even like the bottom of a sweater, the cuff of a sweater, things like that. This is a really nice detail that I think looks really beautiful on a lot of things. It gives your knitting like a very nice finished look. So once you have all of your stitches picked up, now we just have to knit one more round. So I have not done that yet. So I'm just going to quickly knit my stitches around, and that will be row 8 of the pattern. And once we've done that, then we're going to start working the chart. Now, don't be afraid that I just said we're going to be working a chart, because it's not that scary. And I have, of course, included the written instructions for that chart for you. So that if you don't like to follow charts, you can follow the written instructions. This was one of those patterns where I felt like the chart, the written instructions are so easy, the chart isn't necessarily necessary, but I do like to include charts when I can. So follow whichever one works for you. So you would just knit around your 90 stitches, and then we will start our chart. And don't forget, if you have any questions as I go along, don't be afraid to drop those in that chat box, or let us know where you're watching from. I'd love to know. So we're just knitting around. Basically, this is sort of our setup row before we really get into the meat of our cowl here. Okay, so now we're back at the end, and we'll slip our marker, and we're on the start of our next row, or next round, I should say. So our next instruction is where we are following our chart, and our chart says that with the main color, which is what I have here, my cream, we're going to knit 1, slip, slip, knit twice, knit 1, yarn over 4 times, knit 1, knit 2 together twice, knit 1, and repeat that to the end. Okay, so that's easy. And so that takes up 15 stitches. And so that's why you can have any multiple of 15 stitches on your knitting needle. So we're going to start by knitting 1, slip, slip, knit, slip, slip, knit, and then knit 1, yarn over 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, and knit 1, knit 2 together twice. So we're just knitting these next 2 stitches together, and knit 1. And we should have used up 15 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Great, we did. So now we're just going to do that again all the way around. I only have 45 stitches here on my little sample. Obviously, you will have 90 for your cowl. So we're going to knit 1. We're going to do our slip, slip, knit, slip as if to knit, slip as if to knit. Bring your left needle in front of your right needle and knit those 2 stitches together through the back loop. That's the slip, slip, knit, slip as if to knit, slip as if to knit, knit those 2 together through the back loop, knit 1, yarn over 4 times. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, knit 1, knit 2 together twice, knit 1, and then we'll just keep repeating that. Knit 1, slip, slip, knit. That's 1 slip, slip, knit. There's our second slip, slip, knit. Knit 1, yarn over 4 times. Knit 2 together twice. And I have an extra stitch. So let's just go back and see if we can find a mistake. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay, well, oh, I see where I made my mistake here. So I did my knit one, yarn over 4 times. So I did 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm supposed to have another knit one before my knit 2 together twice. But I can tell right here that I went straight from my yarn over to my knit 2 together. So we'll just need to back that out, those few stitches. And that's probably the most common mistake, at least I made while I was knitting this, is that I would do the 4 knit 1 yarn overs. And then I would forget that after that 4th one, I need to do 1 more knit 1. So that was where I most commonly made my mistake when I was making the actual cowl. And you can see I continue to make that same mistake. So that's, I guess, something to really watch out for, because that's where I was screwing up my knitting the entire time I was knitting the sample. Okay, so we finished. That's round 1 of our chart. And then the next round is just knit all the stitches. So we already are pretty clear on how to do that. So we're just knitting all the way around. And so when you come to the yarn overs, you're just, if you haven't worked yarn overs before, you're just working into the yarn over. You're bringing your right needle from front to back, just like you normally would with any other kind of stitch. And then here, I'll bring the yarn over to here. And we can do a few stitches knitting in the continental method. And so same thing if you're knitting using the continental method. So you can see this is much slower for me because I don't spend the time to practice. But it's the same thing when you get to your yarn over. It's the same exact thing. You're just bringing your right needle into that stitch like you normally would and just knitting it. So you would just knit all the way around. And then rounds 3, 4, 5, and 6 are just repeating rows 1 and 2 again. So you can see here, we're just making where our yarn overs are. We're making this little part, and then we have the decreases over here, decreases here. Our 15 stitch repeat ends with the knit 1, and then it starts again with the knit 1. So that's what you have there. It makes this feather and fan, old shale, whatever you like to call it, type pattern, which I really love. And I really love using it for this cowl because it does make these ridges go up and down. So again, those 2 rows I just demonstrated, you're going to do those 2 a total of 3 times. So that's rows 1 through 6 of your chart. Again, you can follow the written instructions or the chart itself. And then you're going to switch to your contrasting color. And so in this case, at the beginning, we started with our contrasting color 1. We would do our 6 rows of the chart and then go to contrast color number 2, which for me is this teal. And then you're just knitting 6 rounds. So I just picked up my new color, my contrasting color 2, and knit 6 rounds. And I have detached my main color here because I'm going to use the swatch to also bind off. But when I was knitting my actual cowl, I did carry the cream when I was knitting the contrasting color. So I did not cut the cream when I was doing these ridges, nor did I twist the yarn or anything like that to carry it up along my project. The reason being is I knit these 6 rounds, but now I'm going to be folding these down basically to where my main color was to pick up a stitch from the inside. So there's no need to really twist the yarn and carry it up with catching it with your other color, because we're going to be bringing our fabric right back down to where the cream is. Let me show you what I mean. So we're going to just knit 1 more here. And then if we were switching back, I'm going to be talking about the bind off, but if we had been switching back to our main color to continue to work the chart again in the pattern, I would cut this and then I would have my cream yarn still attached, and I would come down here and I would be just picking up 6 rows down is going to be your last or it's going to be the first purl bump of that color change. So you would just be coming down here. And then with your main color, would be just picking it up and knitting it like that. And again, this will be what you'll be doing for the bulk of the cowl, is you're just going to work in like that. And then you would continue knitting with your new color. So there's no need to worry about doing any sort of fancy carrying up your main color on the inside. So you would keep repeating that until you get to the last one. So for the actual cowl, you can see we did contrasting color 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. Now, obviously you can stop your cowl whenever you want. I'm going to go ahead and show you how to finish it off just using this contrasting color number 2, just so we have something different to look at. So when it's time to finish off the cowl, the pattern will tell you to work your last chart through round 12, and then you can cut your main color, because we're going to finish off the end of the cowl with whatever contrasting color you're on. Again, I'm showing you in contrasting color 2. The pattern itself says contrasting color number 1. And we're just going to pick up the purl bump 6 rounds below and knit it together. So on the very last one, so for the very last one on your cowl, before you bind off, you're going to just keep working in the same color. And that's just so when we bind off, we have everything's matching at the top, and you don't just have like one round of the cream. I wanted the bottom of the cowl and the top of the cowl to basically match, even though you can see that this is the bind off edge here. I didn't, again, want like a little round of cream here because I don't have one down here. I hope that makes sense. So you can see I'm just picking up. It's real easy when you start, once you are into the color change, because you're just going to pick up that furthest purl bump. That's the one that's 6 rounds down, and then knitting it together. And again, I find it, the easiest way I found was to kind of poke with my thumb and then pick it up with my left needle. But you can also poke with your left thumb and pick it up with your right needle, and then stick it onto your left needle and knit. So you just, again, I can't stress this enough. This, yes, is a little fiddly, but just figure out which way feels the most comfortable for you. So we'll just keep working all the way around here. We're about, starting to get towards the end of making our cowl, but we still have plenty of time. So if you have any questions for me about the cowl, I am going to show how to wear it here in a few minutes once I finish up the instructions, because Linda did ask about that. But if you have any other questions about this, maybe how to customize it or anything like that, be sure to let me know. And if you haven't done so already, be sure to download the pattern. The link is in the description where you're watching this video. And also, maybe a little bit of a spoiler alert, if you do like this cowl, in November, I plan to be back on one of these Facebook Lives, and we are going to work a hat that isn't, the stitch pattern isn't going to be exactly the same, but it is going to have sort of the same concept with these ridges, and it's going to be really great, because I don't know about you, but as a knitter, I am someone who never has matching anything. I'm wearing random mittens and a random hat and a random cowl or shawl or whatever. I mean, none of it ever matches. I really wanted to try to make something coming up here for, as the weather changes here to colder in North America, where I'm located, that I would actually be making something that would be a matching set that would kind of go together, even if the stitch pattern isn't going to be exactly the same. So if you enjoy the process of picking up these stitches to make these tucks, which honestly, I love doing so much. It's one of my favorite things I've discovered. I knew about it for a long time, but I really hadn't explored actually knitting them until this past year. You will enjoy that hat pattern coming up as well. So Brenda says hello from SC, loving this cowl. It's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Oh, thank you so much, Brenda. I'm glad that you like it. And this is one really, once you get going on it, because the lace, it's just the lace row is the same for the entire cowl. So you can get into a situation where you have the pattern pretty much memorized. So this for me was one that was really great for, when I'm watching TV or listening to an audiobook, something like that. This was a really great pattern to work on. So we just have a couple more stitches here. So let's just keep going. And then let's talk about that bind off. So let's see. And we've got one more. And at the beginning and the end, it can be a little bit tricky to see where you need to pick up, or maybe I even picked up maybe one over from where I should, but see, I'm just going to pick up a strand and knit it together, just picking up the strand from 6 rows below. And we've made that little tuck or ridge. This is also something where you could play around, and obviously you would need more yarn because I indicated in the pattern that each ridge is about 25 yards of bulky weight yarn. And I like this just sort of small ridge here, but if you wanted, you could make a larger ridge. So instead of knitting 6 rounds, I mean, maybe you knit 12, maybe you knit 9, and then pick up 9 rounds down or 12 rounds down. Obviously, the bigger this little ridge or tuck that you make, it is going to cover up some of your lace, but I think that could be really interesting too. Maybe if you did double it, so you would need 50 yards per stripe, and then you would have these ridges coming down even more. I think it could be really fun. I think this would be so cute. Well, obviously you wouldn't put a cowl on a baby, but I think when we do the hat next month using this technique, I am going to size it for baby sizes because I think that this is going to look so cute on a baby in a hat form. So anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. But now that we have this last ridge done, we're going to go ahead and bind off. So we can get rid of our stitch marker at this point. We don't need it. And for your bind off, you just want to keep your bind off loose. I didn't use any particular bind off here. So I would either use a regular bind off, which is just knit a stitch, knit the second stitch, pass the first over the second like that, and just make sure you're keeping it loose. The other bind off that I really like when I'm trying to make a loose bind off is knit 2 together through the back loop. It's my favorite one for finishing a top down shawl. And so in that case, you're going to get, basically, we have a stitch on the right needle. We're going to bring 1 stitch over from the left needle to the right needle and then knit those 2 together through the back loop. Bring the next stitch over to the right needle, knit those together through the back loop. So again, it doesn't really matter what bind off you're using here. You just want to keep it nice and loose. And you would just do that all the way around until your project is bound off, and then you just have to weave in the ends. And so let's talk about weaving in the ends. I know it's not everybody's favorite. It's one of those things, I don't know, I kind of have a love-hate relationship. Sometimes I can really enjoy weaving in my ends on a project, but this here, I think, seems to be where I had everything, joined. So I don't know if you'll really be able to see because the ends are already woven in. But because I did not carry my yarn up and I just cut, you can see I have a tiny little end sticking out right there. When I'm weaving in my ends for anything, not just this project, but I would weave in my ends along the same color. So my teal, I kind of just wove the end in along that line here. And then here, oh, there's the end over here. So I just was weaving in my end over here. Same thing here. And same thing up here. And then with the cream, you'll have one at the start and the end, assuming you, did just carry the cream or your main color all the way up. Same thing. I would weave in the cream. It's kind of over here. I would weave in the cream yarn on the cream fabric. So that's just a little tip for you. Again, especially because my main color is so light, I did want to be careful about that. Obviously, if you use something like black or whatever, you might be able to get away with weaving in some of your ends down here. But I don't know, it just makes it look a little bit neater on the inside too. I'm not someone that worries too much about like the inside of my knitting looking perfect, but for some people that's really important. But it's just overall, I always try to weave in my end with the same color. So there's that. See, Willie says, thanks for sharing the stitch count to make it wider from side to side. Yes, no problem. Happy to do that. Yes. So 15 stitches is what you need. And let me I'm going to pull up the finished dimensions here on my computer for the pattern, just so we can talk about that for a second. So this particular cowl, and I now will actually turn my video up so we can try it on. So this particular circumference for this cowl is 30 inches in circumference. And I made it that way because that's kind of what I like for my cowls. When making a cowl, for me, the smallest circumference I really ever design is maybe 24 or 25 inches in circumference. That is a very close to the neck cowl. So if you're someone that likes to wear turtlenecks, that you don't mind having stuff close to your neck like that, you could maybe go down to 75 stitches and make it closer to the neck cowl. I don't like things close to my neck like turtlenecks for the most part. So I do like a looser cowl. So I'm going to just try this on. I do have my mic here, so I'll be careful. But I just wear it like this. It's just over my head. And if I was just wearing this out and about, I might just do it like that. When I tuck it into my coat, I tend to fold it like that. And so I didn't do this with this particular pattern, but if you like a really big cowl, something that's more like a scarf where you can actually wrap it around your neck twice, most of the time, all you need to do is double the number of stitches for the cowl pattern. I'm not going to tell you that's always the case because, different cowl patterns do different things and use different techniques. But for this one, it's the perfect example. If you want a really big cowl that's more like a scarf, or, they're often called infinity scarves, instead of casting on 90 stitches, you would cast on 180 stitches. And then instead of getting a cowl that's 30 inches in circumference, you would end up with a cowl that's 60 inches in circumference, which is 5 feet. That's not quite the length of a scarf, but that is enough that you could put it on and twist it and wrap it around your neck twice, like to really, really keep this area warm. This one even is one of those where I feel like if I had it on and my coat was missing, I didn't have a hood on my coat or something, and it started snowing or I just got cold, this one's deep enough. This part is deep enough that you can even kind of do one of these and wear it as a little hood if you want. So that's why I like this cowl size. But again, you can do it however you like. But for me, a 30-inch circumference for a cowl is just about right, because again, I don't like, and I do get a little itchy sometimes from wool. So I don't like anything too close to the neck. So that's it. Again, it's really easy. It's just those tuck stitches are really the trickiest part. So like I said at the beginning, if you are more of a beginner, don't let that scare you. You can come back and watch this video again at any time. And if you want to make adjustments to it, you can. Like I said, I told you that each ridge to make it this size is 25 yards. So pick your favorite colors, dig into that stash and make it your own. That's what I really love about these projects is I love going online and seeing what all of you have made and seeing how you've made it your own and picked your own color combinations or taken the stitch pattern and done something really cool with it. That's one of my favorite parts of this, sharing these patterns with you, is seeing what all of you do with the pattern to make it your own. So once again, if you haven't done so, be sure to download the pattern. And I want to thank everybody for joining me today. I hope that you enjoyed learning along with me, and I will be back again soon with another great knitting pattern for you. Have a good day, everybody. Happy knitting.